He was a successful businessman who finally found the woman of his dreams.
They were very much in love.
So you married?
They were just enjoying the honeymoon phase.
But their happily ever after is cut short by gunshots in the dead of the night.
I heard pops like a light caliber gun going off.
There was screaming, shots fired.
People were afraid.
The brutal shooting leaves police and family grasping for answers.
There were no obvious suspects.
She kept saying he's a good man, a good husband.
But as the case unfolds, sinful secrets emerge.
They found a revolver tucked into a box of baby wipes. They're forced to rethink everything.
Was this really a random act of violence?
I knew for a fact something wasn't right.
Or is something more sinister afoot?
A few weeks ago, their home was broken into.
She found the kilo of cocaine in the house, and there were condoms in his truck.
Something that's his or yours?
No, they're his.
I didn't believe it.
It's hard to believe that someone would be capable of something like this.
You know, oh, God, I'm scared.
August 2006. It's a sweltering summer in Jacksonville, a bustling beach town along Florida's Atlantic coast.
Jacksonville is a wonderful city. It's multicultural, vibrant, military-friendly.
It's the best of both worlds. It's the largest city in Florida, but it also has that hometown southern feel.
But even a place known for its southern hospitality isn't immune to deadly violence.
On August 21st, in the early hours of the morning, a flurry of 911 calls came in.
Jacksonville 911.
One of the callers is 47-year-old Freddie Zarang.
Yes, ma'am. The police need to come and check something out at the end of Highgate Drive.
I guess it was probably somewhere around 12:45, 1 o'clock in the morning. And I heard what sounded like 3 or 4 shots.
I heard pops, like as if like a light caliber gun going off. And I can't see much, but it looks like something crawling in the middle of the cul-de-sac. Like somebody's actually laying there injured.
As police prepare to respond to Freddie's call, another 911 call comes in from a neighbor of his, Noni Stenson.
This is 911 says.
Yes, sir. I see the officers coming. I woke up to like 2 loud bangs. You know, oh, God, I'm scared.
Just calm down, okay?
I'm trying, sir.
There were various different reports of an individual down, shots fired. It was a Tier 1 response for the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office.
Officers speed to the upscale gated neighborhood on Jacksonville's south side.
It was a shock because that's an area you could go years without a crime happening.
Once they arrive on scene, police rush to the victim's aid.
I noticed the victim in the cul-de-sac in a pool of blood, but there was nobody else around at all. There was a lot of blood around his chest and some on his face. And I thought, well, somebody just shot this man.
The victim is still conscious, but barely.
It's got a pulse. It's weak, but it's a pulse.
He was alive and coherent, but I could tell he wasn't in very good shape at the time.
He was at least able to tell the police his name, Solomon Stenson.
Their very first priority was to provide medical aid. Immediately, they called for paramedics.
A weak pulse. Go ahead and start EMS. Tell them step it up, please.
29-year-old Solomon Stenson always put family first.
Solomon grew up as one of 4 children on the east side of Jacksonville.
We grew up poor. We didn't have like a lot of materialistic things that other kids had, but we had lots of love.
He was real playful, real friendly. He was just fun to be around.
He was trying to please everybody, even when he didn't have to. He always just wanted everybody to be happy.
When Solomon reached his teenage years, he fathered a baby girl with his high school sweetheart.
Even though Solomon's relationship did not last, he still stayed in his daughter's life.
The two continued to remain great parents to their daughter and make sure that she was well taken care of.
After fathering a son with another girlfriend in 2002, Solomon dedicated himself to giving his kids the life they deserved.
He always had dreams, and he was a go-getter.
Solomon became an entrepreneur where he started his own business. He opened up a car wash. He also had a landscaping business as well.
Running multiple businesses left Solomon little time for love, until a beautiful stranger named Noni Allen walked into his life.
Hey.
How can I help you today?
Just a regular car wash.
Okay, well, you came to the right place.
Noni met Solomon at the car wash that he owned when she was getting her car cleaned. The two started talking. They really hit it off.
Thank you. All right, well, you can just have a seat over there. I'm going to grab your car, take care of that for you, and I'll bring them back when it's done, okay?
Okay. Thank you, Solomon.
Thank you.
Upon cleaning her car, he left his phone number in her middle console. She thought, why not, and gave him a call.
A week later, Solomon and Noni were on their first date.
They ended up talking late into the night.
You just seem like such a great dad.
Thank you. I do what I can.
I get it.
They really seemed to click, and they realized that they really had a lot in common. Solomon learned that Noni was a single mom in graduate school studying psychology.
Between school, these kids, it never gets easy.
It doesn't. Yeah.
Solomon was really impressed to learn that Noni had made the dean's list every single semester and really worked hard to make sure that she provided for her child.
My brother liked the fact that she was educated, she was family-oriented, and she seemed like she was a go-getter like him.
But Solomon also learned that things weren't easy for a single mother trying to earn her degree.
Noni did express to Solomon that she still had great financial struggles. Because Solomon has always been known to want to try to help other people, before they parted ways, that even if he offered her a few $100s.
There you go.
You do not have to do that.
I insist. You deserve it.
Thank you.
Of course.
That's when Noni realized she had met her Prince Charming.
Someone that could be a really great provider and also a great partner for life.
It didn't take long for the couple's relationship to blossom into a true partnership.
They were both very much in love. When Solomon proposed to Noni, she did not hesitate to say yes.
Will you marry me?
Yes, of course. Oh my gosh.
She was very elated and getting ready to spend their forever together.
Noni and her daughter moved in with Solomon.
The couple pledged their love to one another in a joyful ceremony, surrounded by friends and family.
They were just enjoying the honeymoon phase of their marriage, and it wasn't before long before they learned that they would be welcoming a new baby boy.
When he found out that he was having a son, he was very excited.
After the birth of their new baby, Solomon and Noni also purchased a new home.
They found a 2,200 square foot home in one of Jacksonville's nicest neighborhoods.
Years of hard work had really paid off for Solomon because he was finally able to move his family into a very safe and gated community.
They were a young, upwardly mobile couple. I was very impressed with them.
They was living the dream.
But now the Stinsons have been jolted out of their dream by the sound of gunshots in the gated community they call home.
Once police got on scene, they realized that Solomon has been shot twice, once in the neck and the other in the back.
He was covered in blood.
But he's still alive.
Paramedics were there very quickly, and Mr. Stinson was taken to the hospital.
They were doing everything they could to stabilize him until they could get to the ER.
It quickly becomes a race against time to save his life.
When 29-year-old Solomon Stinson met a gorgeous, hardworking single mom named Noni Allen, he knew he'd found his soulmate.
They really seemed to click and to have a lot of dreams and aspirations that were very parallel.
They were in love. They wanted to spend the rest of their lives together.
By the summer of 2006, Solomon and Noni had gotten married, had a child, and moved into an upscale home in one of Jacksonville's nicest neighborhoods.
The people of the neighborhood were all family-oriented. It was just a nice community to be in.
Solomon was determined to provide a good life for his growing family and willing to put in the hard work.
But now, Solomon has been found lying in a pool of blood outside his home.
He had been shot 2 times.
He was quickly taken into an ambulance and rushed to the nearest hospital.
As Solomon's life hangs in the balance, Jacksonville police speak with his traumatized wife, Noni.
She was obviously distraught, as any spouse would be.
Noni says when she made the call to 911 earlier, she didn't realize the gunshots she heard were directed at her husband.
Oh my God, is he gonna be okay? Is he gonna be okay?
We'll let you know as soon as we hear an update from the hospital.
She couldn't understand who would do anything like this to him. She kept saying he's a good man, a good husband, a good father.
Officers needed to calm her down before she was ready to give a statement.
While officers console Noni, Jacksonville detectives arrive and begin trying to piece together what happened.
Investigators immediately notice a trail of blood leading from Stinson's driveway out into the street.
That was a strong indicator that the actual shooting occurred in the driveway closer to the house.
Police also located a bullet fragment from a .38 caliber handgun. The fragment was laying near where Solomon's body was found.
But they did not discover any shell casings. This indicated that the killer either used a revolver or policed up their shell casings after the shooting.
Based on the physical evidence, investigators wonder if Solomon was the victim of a drive-by shooting.
The blood spatter tracking went from the house to the street.
But why would someone want to target a loving father like Solomon?
Solomon's reputation in the community points to one potential explanation.
Solomon was known to be successful, financially speaking, so maybe someone came after him for his money.
I thought somebody maybe had followed him home that night and robbed him.
But as the first responders continue to assess the crime scene, that motive appears less plausible.
The initial responding officers noted that he had on expensive jewelry and he had a significant amount of cash on him that was still there.
That would pretty much immediately rule out robbery as a motive for this crime.
Detectives believe that this looks more like a targeted hit.
But who's behind it? Unfortunately, none of Solomon's neighbors have any guesses.
One of the 911 callers, Freddie Zerain, was not able to get a good look at the shooter.
Tell us what you saw. I didn't see anything. I heard the gunshot, and that's when I called 911.
They wanted to know exactly what I had witnessed, and I explained to them that it was mostly audible. I couldn't see because there just wasn't a lot of light there.
Initially, there were no obvious suspects. There wasn't a whole lot to go on.
Detectives are hopeful that Solomon's wife, Noni, may be able to give them the answers they're looking for.
We've just been trying to play catch up to find out exactly what happened tonight. Can you tell me what happened?
I was asleep and I heard bam, bam. I got up. My daughter was like hiding in the hallway, so then she heard a noise.
The sound of the shots were so close, it terrified Noni. So she started looking out the windows.
At first, Noni says she didn't notice anything suspicious.
But then her daughter told her Daddy was shot.
She was like, Daddy was shot. And I heard him say, ow.
Your 8-year-old daughter said she heard your husband say, ow.
That's when she really started to panic.
Noni was surprised by what her daughter said because she didn't think her husband was home.
He had left the house about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and he had not returned by the time she had gone to sleep.
At that point, she knew that something wasn't right, and she called 911 for help.
No. Oh, God, I'm scared.
When detectives asked Noni where Solomon had been that day, she says he probably was hanging out with some friends.
What friends did he normally be out with?
So I really don't know a lot of his friends. I know he hangs with a guy named, they call him Monto.
Mafia?
It isn't much to go on, but as investigators wrap up the interview, Noni is overcome by emotion.
She was shaking. She was scared.
And she reveals that there's a surprising reason why she kept her distance from Solomon's friends.
She offers up a new, shocking piece of information.
She informed the officers that her husband had a prior record.
Noni reports that her husband is a convicted felon and a drug dealer.
After a young father and entrepreneur named Solomon Stinson was gunned down outside his Jacksonville home, local police are struggling to account for the brutal crime.
It did make sense. Everybody loved him.
At this point, police were needing more information, and they were hoping that they could find more information by speaking with Solomon's wife, Noni.
Now, Noni has revealed a surprising new piece of information about her husband.
Noni says her husband is a convicted felon and a drug dealer.
Investigators realize Noni's statement could be the key to unlocking this crime.
Drug business goes hand in hand with violence and firearms.
Maybe this was a drug deal gone bad. Maybe this was a retaliation or a hit.
But before investigators can dig deeper, they receive a phone call about Solomon's condition.
They heard from the hospital that Solomon Stinson hadn't survived. At that point, it became a homicide investigation.
Ma'am, sorry to tell you, but Solomon didn't make it.
When police told Noni that Solomon did not survive, she collapsed to the ground.
She was completely overwhelmed with emotion.
Solomon's family is just as devastated when they receive the tragic news.
When I got that phone call, I just was like, dropped to my knees. I wouldn't have thought in a million years the reality of it.
It was a tragedy. And I just cried that whole night. It's unbelievable. You know, everyone was hurt, devastated.
Investigators know they need to act quickly in order to bring Solomon's killer to justice.
Police then gave Noni a moment to, grieve her husband and collect herself before taking her to the station for a more formal interview.
There, they implore her to tell them everything she knows about Solomon's illegal activities.
She was almost certain that he had been dealing drugs for quite some time. Years, in fact.
I mean, just because of the crowd of people he hangs with, stays out late, the money, a lot of cash.
A lot of cash and no accountability for the cash.
Yeah.
Noni says when she confronted Solomon about her suspicions, it didn't go well.
What's his reaction?
He was like, it's his business, and, just...
It becomes your business too, your husband and wife.
This was actually such an area of contention in their relationship that it led to them splitting up.
That's one of the reasons why we separated.
How long were y'all separated?
A year and a half.
But eventually the couple reconciled.
They had gotten back together recently because Solomon had informed her that he had straightened up his act.
He kind of led me to believe that, he stopped.
Now, Noni believes Solomon's promise was a lie.
Noni suspected that he was still lying and that he was still engaging in activities that he should not have been.
Noni reported a few weeks ago their home was broken into.
She felt that that was proof positive that Solomon was still involved in the drug trade.
But Noni says drugs weren't the only problem in their relationship.
Noni goes on to report that she was a victim of domestic violence from her husband.
You ever get arrested for that?
Every time.
How many times?
I think it was twice.
And to make matters worse, Noni also suspected that he was cheating on her.
She claimed that she found a box of condoms in his truck.
Condoms in the truck glove box?
Yeah.
I'm an equal opportunity interviewer or something. Those his or yours?
No, they're his.
Detectives end their interview with Noni, stunned by what they've learned.
If what Noni is saying is true, there could be multiple people who would like to see Solomon dead.
From a scorned mistress to a rival drug dealer.
At this point, the investigators really had their work cut out for them.
Armed with a more complete picture of Solomon's past, detectives return to the scene of the crime.
Police received permission from Noni to search her and Solomon's home in order to see if there were clues to what happened to Solomon inside.
Miss Stinson said you can search the house anywhere you like.
At first glance, nothing sticks out.
When police initially went inside, it looked like a typical suburban home.
But they soon begin to uncover evidence of Solomon's criminal behavior.
In a dresser drawer, they discovered high-caliber rifle rounds.
Then they found a revolver tucked into a box of baby wipes.
The weapon and the ammunition were sent out for ballistics testing.
But it's what police find in a spare bedroom that leads them to think they're on the right track.
Underneath a mattress, they believe they've found what might have sparked this crime.
More than 4 pounds of pure cocaine.
Jacksonville police investigating the death of 29-year-old Solomon Stinson have just made an alarming discovery inside his home. 2 kilos of pure cocaine.
Detectives know that it's worth thousands of dollars and could definitely be a motive for the murder.
This seemed even more probable based upon the fact that their home had just recently been burglarized.
Detectives theorize that Solomon may have surprised the would-be robbers, prompting them to shoot him and flee.
Detectives thought that maybe the assailants were caught off guard by Solomon being outside.
And instead of finishing the job, they killed him before police arrived.
Hoping to drum up leads, investigators turned to their network of street informants.
They started putting out feelers. Hey, have you heard any information about someone planning a burglary on the South Side?
And before long, tips start rolling in.
Homicide.
One potentially credible tip came in that Solomon was murdered because he had ripped off one of his suppliers.
They received another tip that stated that he was killed over a drug disconnect with a guy named One-Eyed Tony.
Could One-Eyed Tony be the same man Noni mentioned in her interview that she only knew by the name Macho?
Police really struggled to identify who this One-Eyed Tony could be.
Solomon's phone records failed to provide any help.
Unfortunately, that lead was promising at its inception, quickly turned into a dead end.
More than 24 hours after Solomon was killed, the investigation comes to a standstill. But that changes when a new witness comes forward.
Can I have a seat there?
Investigators speak to Solomon's sister, Amanda. They learn some new surprising information.
I did tell the detective, like, something ain't right. I believe that this has nothing to do with the drug dealing.
Amanda's suspicions revolve around someone else, someone much closer to her brother.
I told him to look at Noonie Stimson. I believe she's the killer.
Could Solomon's doting wife, the same wife who collapsed to the ground at the news of his death, really be the one who pulled the trigger?
For me to speak that, it was the hardest thing for me to do, but I know I needed to say it because it wasn't adding up. Just all the arrows were pointing at her.
Amanda lays out exactly why she suspects Noni.
It's just the way she's been behaving. It's not normal.
What do you mean by not normal?
The way she was acting, it wasn't matching up. It wasn't no emotions. It wasn't no feelings. I knew for a fact something wasn't right.
Noni would not let her come over anymore and spend time with her.
I knew she was keeping something from me. The more questions I began to ask her, the more she started to pull away.
Hey, I came to check on you. I've been calling you.
Sorry, just been going through a lot lately.
Another concerning note was the fact that Noni was trying to schedule the funeral immediately before Solomon's family members could make it into Jacksonville.
We need to plan this funeral.
How can somebody pass away on a Monday and you trying to bury him on a Wednesday? We was trying to get family come in from out of town to come to the funeral. They couldn't even make it. That's how quick she was still trying to bury him.
Listen, Amanda, we just need to get it over with, okay?
Most disturbing of all is a rumor Amanda heard spreading among Solomon's friends and family.
She had heard that Noni was planning to leave the city any day now.
It was like she was trying to pack up and rush to go out of town so quickly.
I'm telling you, she's about to take off.
Where's she going?
I don't know. But you guys need to find her and get her before she leaves.
All of these actions made her feel suspicious about Noni and what happened that night.
Detectives find it hard to square what they're hearing from Solomon's sister with what they know about Noni.
Based upon the information they had so far, they had no reason to believe that Noni could have done something like this.
During their interview, she was open and honest about saying that she and Solomon had issues that they were trying to work through.
Investigators had no reason to doubt Noni's story. She appeared to be forthcoming with them.
However, a call from the state crime lab will change everything investigators thought they knew about Noni Stinson.
When the police searched the Stinsons' home, they found a revolver tucked underneath some baby wipes. They assumed it belonged to Solomon.
The crime lab results came back, and that .38 caliber revolver.
It indicated that the bullet fragments that were found next to Solomon's body and inside of his body were a match.
Noni had the murder weapon the whole time.
Homicide investigators in North Florida were all but certain that Solomon Stinson was murdered by a rival drug dealer who was out to get him.
One of their contacts says that Solomon was killed because he failed to pay his supplier for drugs.
But now new evidence suggests that Solomon may have been targeted by someone closer to home.
Solomon's sister informed them they should be focusing their attention on his wife Noni as a suspect.
The gun that killed Solomon was in the home the entire time.
She was the only one that had possession of the murder weapon.
That instantly makes Noni the prime suspect.
Based on the tip that Noni plans to flee Jacksonville as soon as possible, investigators don't waste any time bringing her in for another round of questioning.
And in the interrogation room, detectives start trying to pick Noni's story apart.
In her last interview, she said she thought Solomon was cheating on her. Could that be a motive here?
He was pissed off when he came home.
I didn't know when he came home. Like, I was asleep.
Noni just continued to maintain her same story that she was asleep and awakened at 1:30 by gunshot. When they confront her about the .38 revolver, Noni acts completely surprised by this.
Did you fire that gun?
Yes, sir.
Have you ever touched that gun?
No, sir.
Fingerprints aren't going to be on that gun?
No, sir.
She claims she didn't know the gun even existed.
At this point in the interrogation, the detectives directly asked her, "Did you murder your husband with that .38 caliber revolver?"
In a fit of anger, mad at him, banging somebody else coming in late at night?
Nope.
You shoot him with any gun?
No, sir.
Realizing that she's gone from a witness to a suspect, Noni asks for a lawyer.
I don't want to answer any more questions.
Even without Noni's cooperation, detectives believe they are still close to cracking this case.
There you go.
But they still need the hard evidence to prove it. So investigators take Noni's fingerprints.
Detectives compare her fingerprints to the prints that were on the murder weapon.
It's a match.
So after they get that bombshell evidence, they then decide to arrest her for the murder of her husband.
This time you're under arrest for fatally shooting Solomon Stinson?
Oh, God, Lord Jesus.
Detectives charge Noni with 1 count of murder and book her in the Duval County Jail.
News of her arrest comes as much-needed relief for Solomon's grieving loved ones.
When the police called me and told me, forgive my language, I was like, God, I'm so happy that that didn't get away.
We still couldn't believe it that it was her. You know, it's hard to believe that she would do something like that.
Now with the fingerprint evidence, this appears to be an open and shut case.
But Noni isn't done yet.
Noni Stinson presented a shocking new defense. She claimed that she did kill her husband, but she did so in self-defense.
In August of 2006, after Noni Stinson's fingerprints came back as a match to the gun that killed her husband, Jacksonville police charged her with murder.
This time you're under arrest for fatally shooting Solomon Stinson?
Oh, God, Lord Jesus.
In the detective's eyes, it's proof that she did kill Solomon.
But when Noni's trial begins 1 year after her arrest in August of 2007, her attorneys present a surprising defense.
Her attorney makes the case that she was a battered and abused woman who had no choice but to kill her husband.
She claimed that she shot him in self-defense.
To support their theory, Noni's attorneys point to the couple's history of violence.
Solomon had been arrested for domestic violence at least twice.
And in a bold move, Noni takes the stand to testify in her own defense.
Noni tells the jury that there was an argument. The argument began when she found the cocaine in the house.
What is this doing in our house, Solomon?
Where'd you get that?
What is this doing in our house,
Are you
Solomon?
crazy? Didn't I tell you stop going in my stuff?
What are you doing?
They started fighting and things escalated.
Cocaine, really?
She says Solomon pulled a gun on her.
In the house. Solomon, what is this?
I'm gonna teach you a lesson.
Solomon, wait.
Didn't I tell you not to talk to me like that?
Okay, Solomon.
Didn't I tell you?
Okay.
But instead of shooting her, he started punching her multiple times in the stomach.
In the midst of the struggle, Noni says she managed to pry the gun out of Solomon's hand.
She says she was able to grab the gun and then was able to fire 3 shots.
2 of those gunshots struck Solomon, and he then stumbled outside, where he was later found by police.
When she was questioned by law enforcement, Noni claimed she was too scared to tell the truth.
Just shoot him with any gun.
No, sir. She told the jurors that as a victim of domestic violence, that she had become accustomed to lying and covering up abuse, and so that the lying to law enforcement was second nature to her.
On the surface, Noni's story seems plausible, but prosecutors aren't convinced.
When the prosecution has an opportunity to rebut those arguments, they start to rip apart that defense piece by piece.
When I first observed Noni Stinson right after the incident, she did not appear to be harmed, or her clothing was not disheveled in any way that I could see. And the house did not look like there had been signs of any kind of struggle.
Prosecutors contend that Noni wasn't a battered woman. She was an angry one.
She was tired of him lying to her and cheating on her, and she had just had enough.
They believe that when Solomon pulled into the garage on that summer night in 2006, Noni was waiting for him.
When Solomon returned home, Noni informed Solomon that she was tired of his behavior.
What was up?
I can't believe you cheating on me again.
Cheating on you?
Solomon, I can't believe you cheating on me again.
What are you talking about?
You know what I'm talking about. Get off me. I saw the condoms in your car.
At that point is when she pulled out the .38 caliber gun.
Baby.
The prosecution points out that one of Noni's bullets struck Solomon in the back, suggesting that he was running away from her and not trying to attack her when she opened fire.
When both sides rest, the jury deliberates for several hours before returning with a verdict.
They found Noni Stinson guilty of murdering her husband. The judge sentenced her to 35 years in prison for second-degree murder.
I felt a sense of relief. She was going to be away for a long time.
But for Solomon's family, it's too little, too late.
I felt as if 35 wasn't good enough. You know, we wanted life because all the lies that was told on the stand, you know, trying to get out of something that you did.
I still say it should have been more time than what she got.
6 years later, it looks like Noni might be getting out sooner, much sooner.
The appellate court reversed her conviction, finding that the jury had been given faulty jury instructions.
We was like, are you kidding me? She finna get out? Everybody was just so upset.
In August of 2013, Noni's second trial gets underway.
She presented the same defense and the same arguments as in the first trial.
Noni Stinson doesn't get the results she was looking for, though.
Noni is convicted of killing her husband, but this time she was found guilty of the lesser charge of manslaughter. He sentences her to 30 years in prison, just 5 years less than what she was sentenced to on the original charge.
When we heard them 30 years, it was like a relief because we thought she was getting out.
Now Solomon's loved ones are left to grapple with the aftershock of Noni's act of violence.
My brother never going to see none of his kids grow up. They're never going to see their mama or daddy. She left an empty space in our family life as well as her own family life.
He had flaws. However, there were better ways that this situation could have been handled.
Anybody that never knew Solomon, he was a good man. I mean, he was funny, ambitious.
How many of us have did something wrong and we changed our life around?
The human heart is a complex and delicate instrument, capable of the profoundest devotion, yet equally susceptible to the dark currents of possessiveness, envy, and pride. When intimacy is untethered from mutual respect and transformed into an instrument of control, the consequences are almost inevitably tragic. Across 3 distinct landscapes, from the quiet suburban expanses of North Texas to the bustling highways of North Carolina and the sprawling metropolitan neighborhoods of Houston, investigators have faced the grim task of untangling the wreckage left behind when love curdles into obsession. These accounts, though separated by geography and circumstance, share a common thread: the tireless pursuit of truth by dedicated public servants, the resilience of families confronted with the unspeakable, and the ultimate triumph of justice over the darkness of human deception. In the quiet community of Little Elm, Texas, the winter of 2004 began with a disappearance that sent shockwaves through the local police department. It was 6 a.m. on December 10th when the morning briefing convened at the station house. One chair remained conspicuously empty, that of Officer Wayne Irby. To those who worked alongside him, Wayne was the very definition of reliability. A veteran of the force, he was a man who wore his uniform with immense pride and took his responsibilities to the community seriously. When an hour passed, and then 2, with no word from Wayne, his colleagues knew that something was deeply amiss. He was not a man to miss a shift, nor was he someone to let his telephone messages go unanswered. As the morning wore on, the sense of unease among the officers grew. Cynthia Medrano, a fellow officer and close friend, approached the police chief with her concerns. Her instincts told her that Wayne's silence was not a matter of a misplaced alarm clock or a minor personal delay. Recognizing the gravity of the situation, Police Chief Waylon Rhodes dispatched officers to conduct a welfare check at the residence Wayne shared with his longtime girlfriend, Denise Miller, and her 2 teenage children. When the officers arrived, they found a quiet, empty house. There were no vehicles in the driveway, the doors were locked, and repeated knocks went unanswered. The mystery deepened when investigators located Denise's children, Whitney and Walter, to ask if they knew where their mother or Wayne might be. The teenagers revealed that they had not seen either adult in nearly 24 hours. More troubling still was the account of a telephone call Whitney had received from her mother around midnight. Denise had claimed she was running errands and concluded the conversation with an uncharacteristic, lingering declaration of love. It was a statement that left the children uneasy, a subtle departure from her usual manner. By Friday afternoon, the department realized they were dealing with not one, but two missing persons. Jerry Walker, Wayne's partner, could not sit idly by while his friend remained unaccounted for. Accompanied by Officer James Wynn, he decided to check a rental home that Wayne had recently leased across town. Wayne had briefly moved into this residence during a period of separation from Denise, and though they had recently attempted to reconcile, the property remained in his possession. Securing a key from the landlord, the two officers approached the quiet house, calling out Wayne's name as they crossed the threshold. The interior was silent, but in the kitchen, they made an ominous discovery. Resting on the counter was Wayne's fanny pack, an item he carried with him everywhere, alongside his cellular telephone, for a police officer to leave behind both his personal effects and his primary means of communication was a clear sign of trouble. Moving further into the house, Officer Wynn rounded the corner of a hallway and suddenly stopped, letting out a sharp breath. He turned to Walker, his face pale, and instructed his partner to stay back. But Walker's devotion to his partner compelled him to step forward. Lying on the floor of the hallway was Wayne Irby. He had suffered a single, devastating wound to the back of his head. There were no signs of a struggle, no overturned furniture, and no indication of a forced entry. It appeared that Wayne had been taken completely by surprise, gunned down in a place where he should have felt secure. The weight of the discovery hung heavily over the officers. For Jerry Walker, this was not just a crime scene. It was the loss of a partner and a friend. The Texas Rangers and the Denton County Sheriff's Office were immediately called in to assist with the investigation. As crime scene technicians began the meticulous process of documenting the physical evidence, a clear picture of the violence began to take shape. Wayne had been shot with a .25 caliber bullet, a relatively small round but lethal when delivered with precision. The trajectory suggested the shooter had stood directly behind him. The search for the weapon, however, yielded nothing. Furthermore, Wayne's own service weapon, a .40 caliber pistol, was missing from his duty belt, which still hung in the master closet of the home he shared with Denise. As investigators sought to understand the motive behind the killing, they had to consider all possibilities. Wayne's profession meant he had crossed paths with many individuals in the course of his duties, some of whom might bear grudges. Yet, his colleagues maintained that Wayne was exceptionally personable, a peacemaker who diffused conflicts rather than escalating them. He had no known enemies on the beat. The focus of the investigation inevitably turned back to Denise Miller, whose continued absence was now a matter of extreme concern. To those who had observed the couple from the outside, their romance had once seemed exemplary. They had met a year earlier under circumstances that felt almost destined. Wayne, patrolling the neighborhood, had noticed Denise's garage door open and had stopped to advise her of recent thefts in the area. The brief encounter left an impression on both of them. Soon after, Wayne returned to ask Denise on a date. They became inseparable, and Wayne, a divorced father himself, quickly formed a warm bond with Denise's children. Yet beneath the surface of this domestic ideal lay a deep and destructive insecurity. Denise was plagued by a persistent jealousy, convinced that Wayne's friendly demeanor on his beat was a cover for infidelity. She confronted him repeatedly, and though Wayne denied the allegations, the accusations began to erode the foundation of their relationship. The purchase of a home together in 2004 was intended to cement their commitment, but the old trust issues returned with greater force. By autumn, Wayne had initiated a separation, moving into the rental home where his body was eventually found. When Denise unexpectedly lost her employment in November of that year, Wayne's protective instincts took over. He did not want her or her children to face financial ruin, and he agreed to return to the shared home to help support them while they worked on their relationship. But the reconciliation was fragile. Friends later revealed that just days before his death, Wayne had concluded that the relationship was beyond repair. He had made up his mind to end the romance for good and move back to his rental property. Armed with this background, investigators searched the home Denise and Wayne shared. In the master bedroom, they discovered a handwritten note from Denise. The writing was disorganized and filled with a desperate sadness, suggesting that she was contemplating ending her own life. The discovery elevated the urgency of the search. If Denise was armed with Wayne's service weapon and in a state of psychological crisis, she posed a danger both to herself and to any officer who might encounter her. A second, even more explicit note was found on the kitchen island of Wayne's rental home. In this brief message, Denise apologized to her family, stating that she had taken both of their lives and asking that their mothers be contacted. It was, for all practical purposes, a written confession. Yet the question of her whereabouts remained unanswered. Had she fled, or had she carried out her grim promise somewhere in the surrounding countryside? The answer arrived at 4 in the morning on December 11th, when the Gainesville Police Department received a call from a local hotel manager. A guest had called the front desk in distress, her voice slurred and barely intelligible. When the manager attempted to investigate, he found the deadbolt engaged. Accompanied by a maintenance worker, he forced the door open and discovered a woman lying on the floor in a semi-conscious state, crumpled in a fetal position. She had sustained a gunshot wound to her head, just above her eye. Resting on the floor beside her was a .25 caliber handgun. Emergency medical services rushed the woman to a nearby trauma center. Investigators quickly identified her as Denise Miller. In the hotel room, police discovered a bottle of alcohol, over-the-counter sleeping pills, and Wayne's missing .40 caliber service pistol. An examination of the service weapon revealed a crucial detail. The slide was jammed because a cartridge had been inserted into the chamber backward. It appeared that Denise had first attempted to use Wayne's heavy caliber duty weapon, but her unfamiliarity with the firearm caused it to malfunction. She had then turned to the smaller .25 caliber pistol she had brought with her. In the room, investigators also recovered a third, much lengthier note written by Denise. Amidst the expressions of grief and despair, there was a single, significant line in which she claimed that the shooting of Wayne had been an accident and that she had panicked and fled the scene. Texas Ranger Tracy Murphy visited Denise in the hospital once her condition stabilized. Though she survived the self-inflicted wound, the physical toll was severe. She had suffered significant cognitive impairment, paralysis on one side of her body and blindness in one eye. When questioned about the events of December 9th, Denise claimed to have no memory of the shooting. She remembered being at Wayne's house, and she remembered the conflict, but the moment of the trigger pull was gone, replaced by a profound amnesia. To some within the department, this memory loss seemed remarkably convenient. Yet medical professionals noted that the trauma of a bullet passing through brain tissue, combined with the ingestion of alcohol and medication, could indeed cause genuine retrograde amnesia. Whether her cognitive deficit was a protective mechanism of the mind or a physiological consequence of her injuries, the state was determined to proceed with charges. On January 18, 2005, Denise Miller was formally charged with first-degree murder. The trial began on July 10, 2006, at the Denton County Courthouse. Denise appeared before the jury in a wheelchair, a frail and diminished figure. Her defense attorneys argued that Wayne's death was a terrible, unintended accident, pointing to her final note as a dying declaration, written when she had no reason to lie. They argued that if she had intended to kill him, she would have loaded more than a single round into the small pistol, suggesting instead that the weapon had discharged unexpectedly during a confrontation. The prosecution, however, presented a far more deliberate narrative. They introduced the findings of the state crime laboratory, which had tested the trigger of the .25 caliber pistol, the mechanism required between 4.5 and 5 pounds of pressure to fire, a metric that effectively ruled out an accidental hair-trigger discharge. Furthermore, the prosecutors asked the jury to consider her behavior immediately following the shot. If the shooting had been a tragic accident, a devoted partner would have called for emergency medical assistance. Instead, Denise had taken Wayne's service weapon, written a confession, and fled the scene, leaving him to die alone. After less than an hour of deliberation, the jury returned a verdict of guilty. At the sentencing hearing, some expected the jury to show leniency given Denise's severe physical disabilities. Instead, they recognized the gravity of the life that had been taken. Denise Miller was spared the death penalty but was sentenced to 62 years in prison, a term that ensured she would spend the remainder of her life reflecting on the consequences of her actions. For the family of Wayne Irby, the verdict brought a quiet end to a painful chapter. though the loss of a dedicated officer and father could never be truly repaired. While the community of Little Elm was still coming to terms with the tragedy of Wayne Irby, another drama was preparing to unfold several states away in Raleigh, North Carolina. On the morning of January 30th, 2008, commuters traveling along westbound Interstate 540 noticed a shape lying in the cold grass just off the shoulder of the road. It was the body of a young woman, clothed but motionless. When emergency responders arrived, they confirmed that the woman was deceased. Initial thoughts that she might have been the victim of a pedestrian traffic accident were quickly dispelled upon a closer examination of her body. She had been stabbed repeatedly about her face, neck, and chest. The violence of the attack was overwhelming, suggesting an intense personal animosity. Among the commuters slowing down to observe the flashing lights of the emergency vehicles was Darren Curtis. As he continued down the highway, his eyes caught sight of a white sedan parked on the shoulder, roughly half a mile past the crime scene. The vehicle bore a striking resemblance to the car driven by his wife, Latrice. Filled with a sudden, sharp anxiety, Darren turned his vehicle around and returned to the scene. There, his worst fears were realized. The young woman lying in the grass was indeed his 21-year-old wife, Latrice Curtis. Latrice was a popular and ambitious young woman who had recently transferred to North Carolina Central University to complete her degree in business administration. She and Darren had been married for just 9 months, and by all outward appearances, they were a happy young couple with a bright future ahead of them. The sheer brutality of her death left her family and the university community in a state of profound shock. Investigators from the Wake County Sheriff's Office began the painstaking process of examining the 2 primary scenes, the area of grass where Latrice's body was recovered, and her abandoned vehicle half a mile down the road. Inside the car, there were clear signs of a violent struggle. The center console was damaged, and trace amounts of blood were found on the driver's side door. Crime scene technicians recovered a foreign deoxyribonucleic acid sample from the steering wheel, indicating that someone other than Latrice had driven the vehicle to its final resting place. During the autopsy, medical examiners made a discovery that changed the trajectory of the investigation. Inside the victim's body, they recovered a condom. There were no physical injuries to suggest a sexual assault, indicating that the encounter had likely been consensual, but the presence of the item suggested that Latrice had been intimate with someone shortly before her death. To establish a timeline of her final hours, detectives subpoenaed Latrice's cellular telephone records. The logs revealed a series of calls between Latrice and her husband early in the evening. She had told Darren she was running late from her classes and planned to stop for food before returning home. But the records also revealed a flurry of calls exchanged around midnight with a different number, one registered to a young man named Stephen Randolph. Stephen was a prominent student athlete at North Carolina Central University, a talented basketball player with aspirations of entering the National Basketball Association. When investigators contacted him, Stephen initially downplayed his relationship with Latrice, claiming they were merely classmates who occasionally studied together. However, when presented with the telephone records and the forensic details of the autopsy, his demeanor changed. Stephen admitted that they had been engaged in a passionate, secret affair. On the night of the murder, Latrice had visited his residence. During their encounter, a condom had become lodged inside her, and despite their efforts, they were unable to retrieve it. Latrice had left his home around 10 in the evening, intending to resolve the issue once she was in the privacy of her own bathroom. Stephen claimed that after she left, he had driven to the home of his girlfriend, Velma Newton, where he stayed until early the following morning. He insisted that the late-night telephone calls from Latrice were due to her anxiety over the possibility of an unwanted pregnancy. While Stephen's explanation was detailed, investigators remained skeptical. An unwanted pregnancy could represent a significant complication for a young athlete on the verge of a professional career. However, when detectives interviewed Velma Newton, she confirmed that Stephen had arrived at her apartment around 10 that evening and remained there until approximately 1 in the morning, a statement that provided him with a partial alibi. Velma also shared a curious detail with the investigators. She and Stephen had recently been subjected to a series of anonymous, threatening telephone calls. The caller, whose voice was masked, had warned them to end their relationship. Furthermore, Stephen's vehicle had recently been targeted, with all 4 tires slashed while it was parked outside Velma's apartment. It appeared that someone was deeply invested in monitoring Stephen's personal life. The breakthrough in the case came from an unexpected source. State Trooper Isaac Cooper contacted detectives regarding a routine traffic observation he had made on Interstate 540 at approximately 1:30 on the morning of January 30th. He had observed a vehicle parked on the shoulder with its hazard lights flashing. Standard procedure required him to check on the vehicle, but when he approached, he found it empty. As he waited for dispatch to run the license plate, he noticed a white sedan, which matched the description of Latrice's car, parked on the opposite shoulder of the highway, also with its hazard lights active. Before Trooper Cooper could investigate the second vehicle, he was called away to another incident. However, the registration check on the first abandoned vehicle returned a name that sent the investigation in a completely new direction: Robert Reeves. Robert Reeves, known to many in the Durham community as the Bishop, was a charismatic 43-year-old pastor who also worked as a motivational speaker. He was the roommate of Stephen Randolph, having offered the young athlete a room in his home when Stephen was facing financial difficulties. To the public, Reeves was a pillar of the community, a spiritual mentor who had even accompanied Stephen to the police station when the young man was first called in for questioning. When investigators brought Pastor Reeves in for a formal interview, they observed several deep scratches on his hands and arms. Reeves claimed he had sustained the injuries while assisting Stephen with moving a heavy desk. However, when detectives questioned Stephen about the incident, the young man had no memory of any such injury or any mishap involving a desk. With suspicion mounting, investigators turned their attention to the pastor's relationship with his young tenant. Under close questioning, Stephen revealed a disturbing aspect of their living arrangement. He stated that shortly after he moved in, Pastor Reeves had made unwanted sexual advances toward him, suggesting that Stephen could live rent-free in exchange for intimate favors. Stephen had rebuffed the advances, but the encounter had left him deeply uncomfortable. A review of Pastor Reeves' cellular telephone records revealed that the blocked, threatening calls received by Stephen and Velma Newton had originated from the pastor's own device. It became clear to investigators that Reeves had developed a deep, pathological obsession with Stephen. He was consumed by jealousy, monitoring Stephen's interactions with women and seeking to disrupt any relationship that might draw the young man's attention away from him. On the night of January 29th, Latrice had visited Stephen at the home he shared with the pastor. Reeves had observed her car parked outside. The realization that Stephen was being intimate with Latrice apparently pushed the pastor's obsession to a point of homicidal rage. Forensic analysis of the genetic material recovered from the steering wheel of Latrice's car provided the final, undeniable link. The deoxyribonucleic acid profile matched that of Robert Reeves. The prosecution's theory was clear. Reeves had followed Latrice as she drove home from Stephen's residence, using his position of authority, or perhaps posing as a helpful motorist when she stopped on the shoulder of the highway. He had approached her vehicle. When she rolled down her window or stepped out of the car, he had launched a savage, frenzied attack, stabbing her 40 times before moving her car further down the road to delay the discovery of the crime. On October 7, 2009, after a trial that exposed the dark hypocrisy of a man who used his spiritual calling as a shield for predatory behavior, a Wake County jury found Robert Reeves guilty of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. For the family of Latrice Curtis, the verdict was a solemn affirmation of the truth. Though the memory of her promising life, cut short by the envy of a stranger, would always remain a source of quiet sorrow. The destructive nature of control and obsession found another harrowing expression in Houston, Texas, where the disappearance of 19-year-old Tanisha Stewart in March of 2007 would lead investigators into one of the most complex and psychologically challenging cases in the city's history. Tanisha was a young woman of exceptional promise. Having grown up in a challenging neighborhood, she had excelled academically, earning a scholarship to Texas Agricultural and Mechanical University. She was a bright, independent spirit, deeply loved by her family, particularly her sister, Gayla Taylor. In 2005, while working at a local pizza restaurant, Tanisha had met Timothy Shepard. Timothy, who was 25 at the time, was drawn to the 17-year-old Tanisha. Despite the 8-year age difference, they began dating, and Timothy eventually made an effort to integrate himself into her family life, helping her mother with household repairs and presenting himself as a supportive, reliable partner. But when Tanisha moved away to college, the dynamics of the relationship began to shift. The university environment opened new horizons for Tanisha, who grew increasingly independent. Timothy, remaining in Houston, struggled with her burgeoning autonomy. His behavior became increasingly possessive. He would call her repeatedly, demand to know her whereabouts, and on several occasions drove to the university campus to monitor her. During the spring break of 2007, Tanisha returned to Houston. She spent much of her time with friends and had begun a relationship with a classmate named Mark Marks. Timothy's resentment reached a boiling point. On March 15th, Tanisha went missing. When her family realized she had not returned home and was not answering her telephone, they contacted Timothy. He claimed that Tanisha had visited his apartment on Thursday morning, but had walked out after a brief argument regarding a telephone call she had received from Mark Marks. He maintained that he had no knowledge of her whereabouts. Investigators initially interviewed Timothy for several hours. His demeanor was cooperative, and he voluntarily consented to a search of his apartment. Finding no physical evidence of a crime, and with Timothy maintaining his narrative, detectives had to consider other possibilities, including the potential that Tanisha had been abducted by a stranger after leaving the apartment. Tanisha's family, however, remained convinced that Timothy was hiding the truth. Gayla recalled past instances of physical possessiveness, including an occasion when Timothy had placed his hands around Tanisha's neck during an argument. Desperate for answers, the family contacted Quannell X, a well-known community activist in Houston who had a reputation for facilitating communication between the community and law enforcement. Quannell X agreed to assist the family. Recognizing the tension surrounding the case, he arranged a private meeting with Timothy at his apartment. During their conversation, Quannell noted Timothy's extreme distress. Sensing that the young man was on the verge of a psychological collapse, Quannell urged him to speak honestly, reminding him of his accountability to Tanisha's family. In the quiet privacy of the apartment's bathroom, Timothy broke down. He confessed to Quannell that during their argument, when Tanisha had made it clear she was moving on with her life, he had lost control. He had strangled her to death. Timothy claimed that in his panic, he had carried her body to a commercial dumpster behind his apartment complex. Quannell immediately contacted investigator Sidney Miller of the Harris County Sheriff's Office. Accompanied by the detectives, Quannell and Timothy returned to the apartment complex to point out the dumpster. But when investigators opened the lid, they found it empty. The waste management company had emptied the container earlier that week, and the contents had already been transported to a massive regional landfill. The prospect of recovering Tanisha's remains from a landfill of that scale was daunting. Experts advised the sheriff's department that a search would require several weeks, cost over $500,000, and offered no guarantee of success. In a gesture of profound dignity and selflessness, Tanisha's mother requested that the county not exhaust its resources on a potentially fruitless search, choosing instead to focus on securing justice through the legal system. But prosecuting a murder case without a body presents significant legal challenges. Investigators returned to Timothy's apartment with a forensic search warrant, determined to find any microscopic evidence that could confirm Tanisha had died within those walls. Their diligence was rewarded. During the search, crime scene technicians dismantled the kitchen sink's garbage disposal unit. Inside, they recovered trace fragments of tooth enamel, which were later matched through laboratory analysis to Tanisha's dental records. Furthermore, neighbors came forward with a series of strange observations. They recalled that in the days following Tanisha's disappearance, Timothy had operated 2 outdoor smokers continuously, producing a dense, heavy smoke that had prompted neighbors to call the fire department. Firefighters who responded recalled seeing large quantities of meat in a bathtub filled with water, which Timothy claimed was preparation for a church gathering. Other neighbors reported seeing him scrub his patio with an exceptionally strong concentration of bleach. The horrifying implication of these discoveries was clear. Timothy had attempted to completely destroy Tanisha's remains before disposing of the residue. On September 29, 2008, the trial of Timothy Shepard commenced. The prosecution presented a meticulous case based on the forensic evidence of the tooth enamel, the testimonies of the neighbors and firefighters, and the detailed confession Timothy had made to Quannell X. They also called Timothy's cousin, Nicholas Shepard, who testified that Timothy had previously made chilling statements about how he would dispose of anyone who attempted to leave him. During the sentencing phase of the trial, Timothy took the stand in his own defense, attempting to claim that Tanisha had attacked him with a knife and that his actions had been a matter of self-defense. However, under cross-examination, when asked to explain his actions in the aftermath of her death, Timothy admitted to the systematic destruction of her body, a revelation that extinguished any remaining sympathy the jury might have held for him. The jury returned a verdict of guilty, and Timothy Shepard was sentenced to 99 years in prison, the maximum penalty allowed under the law. For the family of Tanisha Stewart, the sentence could not replace the bright, promising young woman who had been taken from them, but it ensured that the man responsible for her loss would never again walk free. The resolution of these 3 cases stands as a testament to the quiet, determined professionalism of the law enforcement officers, forensic scientists, and prosecutors who refuse to let the victims be forgotten. Through their efforts, the illusions of control and respectability behind which these perpetrators hid were stripped away, proving once again that while the human heart may be capable of deep darkness, the light of truth and justice remains ultimately undimmed. The human tapestry of obsession and justice. The human mind is a vast and intricate landscape capable of profound empathy, creative brilliance, and enduring devotion. Yet, when the delicate architecture of human relationships is compromised by insecurity, possessive desire, and pathological jealousy, the results can be devastating. In the realm of criminal psychology, we frequently observe a tragic phenomenon where one individual mistakes control for commitment and possession for love. When a partner attempts to assert absolute ownership over another human being, the warmth of affection can quickly degenerate into a destructive fire. This anthology explores 3 distinct cases that occurred across the United States, each illustrating the dangerous escalation of toxic attachment, the psychological profiles of the offenders, the profound grief of the families, and the meticulous, unyielding efforts of law enforcement to uncover the truth and restore justice. By examining these narratives through a criminological lens, we seek not to sensationalize the tragic loss of life, but rather to understand the underlying psychological mechanisms of these crimes. We honor the memories of the victims, celebrate the dedication of the investigators, and provide the community with valuable insights into the warning signs of possessive violence. Good must ultimately triumph over evil, and through the pursuit of truth, society can find a path toward healing and heightened awareness. Part 1. The Eclipse of Promise. The journey of Tanisha Stewart began with a brilliant light. Growing up in one of the most challenging neighborhoods of Houston, Texas, Tanisha refused to let her environment dictate her destiny. She was one of 6 siblings and had suffered the devastating loss of her father at a very young age. Despite these early hardships, Tanisha possessed an infectious smile, a natural beauty, and a fierce academic drive. She took her studies with immense seriousness, earning the admiration of her peers, her teachers, and her devoted family. Her family recognized early on that she was destined to stand out, to accomplish extraordinary things, and to make her mark upon the world. As a young woman of 17, while working at a local pizza establishment in May of 2005, Tanisha met Timothy Shepard. Timothy was 25 years old, creating an 8-year age gap that initially raised concerns among Tanisha's family. He was handsome, attentive, and persistent, though Tanisha was initially hesitant, preferring to focus on her schoolwork. Timothy was relentless in his courtship, and she eventually agreed to go out with him. What began as a workplace friendship rapidly developed into a serious, intimate relationship. From a psychological perspective, Timothy Shepard represented a complex figure in Tanisha's life. He was slightly older, projecting an aura of security and maturity, functioning at times as a supportive boyfriend and at other times as a protective father figure. In an attempt to integrate himself into her life and win over her skeptical family, Timothy became a frequent presence at her mother's home. He offered his assistance with household tasks, fixing televisions, repairing computers, and performing various chores. Through these efforts, he gradually broke down their defenses, and they began to embrace him as a son and a brother. However, the dynamics of their relationship underwent a profound shift when Tanisha achieved a major milestone, earning a scholarship to Texas Agricultural and Mechanical University. The campus was located nearly 2 hours away from her home in Houston, representing not just a physical distance, but a massive leap toward independence, intellectual growth, and new social horizons. Tanisha was determined to keep her relationship with Timothy alive, but the transition proved turbulent. Only 3 months into her first semester, Timothy reignited a relationship with a former girlfriend and subsequently broke off his romance with Tanisha. The separation left Tanisha devastated, weeping bitterly over the sudden end of their bond. Yet, almost as quickly as Timothy had walked away, he realized the magnitude of his mistake. He traveled to the university campus to surprise her, and after a long conversation, they decided to resume their relationship. But the reconciliation could not restore the past. Tanisha was no longer the 17-year-old girl he had met at the pizza restaurant. She was evolving, meeting new people, expanding her academic horizons, and becoming increasingly independent. She was moving forward in life, while Timothy remained stagnant, his sense of control slipping away. When Tanisha returned home to Houston for spring break in March of 2007, the tension between them reached a critical state. She spent much of her time hanging out with her friends and planning social events, including an upcoming concert. Timothy's possessiveness flared, demanding her attention and questioning why he had to schedule appointments just to see his own girlfriend. A few days before the tragedy, Tanisha's sister, Gayla Taylor, experienced a terrifying nightmare in which Tanisha was attacked by jealous individuals and her body could not be found. Though Tanisha gently dismissed her sister's fears, promising that she would be completely safe, the dream would prove to be a hauntingly accurate premonition. On Sunday, March 18, 2007, Gayla returned home from church to a distressing phone call from their mother. No one had heard from Tanisha since Thursday. She had failed to attend the concert with her friends. Her cellular phone was unanswered, and she had vanished without a trace. The family's anxiety quickly turned to absolute terror. They contacted local hospitals and jail facilities, trying to cover every possible scenario, but there was no record of her anywhere. The family filed a missing persons report on Monday, March 19, 2007. Investigators, recognizing that Timothy Shepard was one of the last people to have seen Tanisha, requested that he come to the police station for questioning. Timothy appeared cooperative, presenting a narrative that seemed plausible on the surface. He claimed that he had picked Tanisha up on Thursday morning at approximately 3 o'clock. During the drive back to his apartment, Tanisha had received a telephone call from a male college friend named Mark Marks. Timothy admitted that this early morning call had upset him, raising suspicions of infidelity. According to Timothy, once they arrived at the apartment, he attempted to discuss the situation, but Tanisha refused, stating she was tired and wanted to sleep. The following morning, the confrontation resumed. Timothy demanded answers about Mark, but Tanisha, exhausted by his jealousy, refused to engage. She reportedly walked out of the apartment, leaving on foot, and that, Timothy claimed, was the last time he ever saw her. The detectives questioned Timothy for nearly 20 hours. Throughout the intense interrogation, his account did not waver. He maintained his innocence and provided written, voluntary consent for the police to search his apartment. The search of his residence revealed no immediate physical evidence of a struggle or a crime. Lacking any legal grounds to detain him, the investigators returned his keys and allowed him to leave, redirecting their focus toward the other man in Tanisha's life, Mark Marks. Mark Marks was a 19-year-old college student who had been dating Tanisha for approximately 1 month. When questioned, Mark was cooperative and articulate. He admitted that he was aware of Tanisha's relationship with Timothy and had expressed his dislike of the arrangement, but he denied any involvement in her disappearance. Crucially, Mark possessed a verified alibi, having been at a party with friends on South Padre Island at the time Tanisha vanished. With both primary associates apparently cleared, detectives faced the chilling prospect that Tanisha had been abducted by a stranger after walking away from Timothy's apartment. As the days progressed, the crucial 48-hour window for finding a missing person alive began to close. Tanisha's family and friends organized search parties, canvassing the neighborhoods, knocking on doors, and speaking with residents. It was during